Chapter 1. Like a soldier, I stood facing the two-story building looming over against the cloudy evening sky. My heart pounded in my chest like war drums as I anticipated the coming battle. Tonight was going to be my night to triumph once and for all. After what felt like an eternity, my feet carried me valiantly down the concrete path towards a pair of transparent glass double doors. These doors bore the words Starroom Arts Dance School, along with the symbol of a ballerina doing a pirouette amidst a swirl of hearts, flowers, and stars. With my hands, I pushed my way through these doors and made my way onto the proverbial battlefield, a wide room with chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, which cast a warm, yellowish 75-watt glow onto custard-colored walls. These walls were lined with bulletin boards that were plastered with news articles, white doors leading to various rooms, and champagne-colored sofas with mahogany tables next to them. Trying my best to ignore the sense of vulnerability that swept over me, I set my eyes and ears to work. As my stomach churned painfully and my sweaty palms gripped the straps of a backpack, my eyes canvassed the area and my ears listened intently. The room was relatively empty, except for the receptionist who sat behind the desk gazing intently at a computer screen, and several girls around the age of 7 sitting on the carpeted floor in a group. All that could be heard was the chattering of these girls and the muffled sounds of different genres of classic, jazz, and hip-hop music issuing from behind the white doors along the wall. Every now and then the music would be interrupted by the indistinct sound of a voice giving instructions before resuming. My heart skipped a beat at the slightest movement. Quickly, my eyes darted over to the source to see what it was. It turned out to be a short freckle-faced girl in a pair of long white stockings wearing a dark blue leotard. Her red hair was pulled back into a short ponytail, which bounced slightly with her gait as she made her way to one of the white doors. Ignoring the slight feeling of being unwelcome, which usually crept over me whenever I entered these premises, I tried to remain focused on the task at hand. Leaving my shoes with a pile of others, my feet carried me carefully towards one of the sofas, as if to avoid setting off some sort of alarm that would somehow blow my cover. In a sweeping motion, I slung my backpack from around my shoulders, let it plop onto the sofa, and sat down next to it as if it was my best buddy. All I had to do now was wait. As I looked around the room, it occurred to me how exposed I felt. I needed to look as though I was preoccupied with another task so as not to give away my position. Unfortunately, my enemy had spies lurking within my very senses. My enemy would do its best to intimidate me by using my nervous system to rattle my composure. Quickly, my hand seized a magazine from the table next to the sofa to be used as a shield for my fortress. The plan was to seem distracted with this magazine and not as though I was anticipating someone's arrival. My brain was so caught up in how brilliant this plan was, my senses barely noticed when another blonde girl strolled by, chattering happily with 2 of her friends. My eyes had to do a double take before taking in the sight of a thin blonde girl of 14 with shining blue eyes and pink, bubblegum glistening lips. Kristen Bernadette. At the sight of Kristen, my brain was now beginning to realize that the plan, which it had so brilliantly set in motion, had worked a little too well. So well, in fact, that my eyes chose this very moment to alert my brain that the magazine in my hands was upside down. By the time I am getting ready for my first attack, my mind is already pelting me with a series of excuses pertaining to why it was a bad idea to try and interact with Kristen. She's not ready for you yet. You don't really know her that well. If you approach her now, you'll look stupid. One after the other, the excuses came non-stop, pelting me like grenades, landing in my brain and exploding on contact in white-hot bursts which left my brain stunned and dazed. I waited until Kristen disappeared into a room with her friends before wrenching my body off the sofa to make for one of the safest places in the area. My now shaking legs carried me towards a small corridor off the lobby. Once inside the corridor, I pushed my way through a door leading to the more coolly lit men's restroom. Leaning against one of the white marble sinks along the wall, I gazed at my visage in the mirror. A thin, bespectacled African-American boy of 17 wearing a black t-shirt with the number 11 in white on the front of it stared back at me, with a look of fear on his face. Trying to regain my composure after my mind's first attack, I willed the look of fear on the face of my brave soldier to be replaced by a look of determination. Brow furrowed and teeth gritted tightly, I raised my fists and began thrusting them one after the other at my reflection. "Come on," I growled silently. "You want a piece of me, Sonny? Come at me, bro. I can take you. Why don't you and I take this outside right now, huh? I will take you all the way. How do you like those apples? After throwing these demoralizing verbal threats at my mind to intimidate it, I thought it best to calm my nerves and get ready to plan another attack. With my fingers, I tugged at the collar of my shirt and took a whiff. A sigh of relief escaped my lips as a spicy scent filled my nostrils. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Back out in the lobby, I spotted two people who could serve as allies, a short boy with brown hair and a sandy-haired girl with glasses. Their names were Derek and Holly. I breathed another sigh of relief as I approached them. On several occasions, I had witnessed them exercise the ability to interact comfortably with Kristen, and I figured that since my physical form had no trouble interacting with them verbally, they would somehow be able to provide me contact with Kristen. As I approached them, they seemed to have noticed my nervous state right away. "Are you okay?" Derek asked. "You look a little green," Holly added. At that moment, no response seemed more appropriate than quoting a memorable line from a superhero action film. Considering the fact that most people who get hit by that amount of radioactive energy don't live to tell about it, I say I'm doing pretty well, I said. Derek chuckled and pointed at me. "I love Zip Zap," he said. "Did you see it, Holly?" I asked. Holly shook her head and said she hadn't. Derek said something to her in response. Soon their voices became distant as the conversation faded into things that happened at their school, a subject which I was neither familiar with nor interested in. I glanced around for Kristen when suddenly I heard her calling to one of her friends whose name was Cheryl. As a response came, I instinctively looked over at the source. The sight that met my eyes hit me with such a powerful force that shocked both me and my mind. Cheryl Morganson was a tall girl aged 15 with maroon shiny hair which was pulled back into a long ponytail. She wore a white pair of tight pants that reached down to her knees and a hot pink shirt that didn't quite cover her midriff all the way. The weak feeling in my knees returned, followed by a spinning sensation in my head and a feeling as though my brain were being stretched out. I stumbled back to my place of refuge. My hands began tearing at my head in anguish. My face screwed up in pain. My brain seemed to cry in agony. Why do we have feelings? What are they even for? My nerves flooded with excitement again as the two-way battle between my mind and I soon became a three-way battle. Calming my nerves is a bit tougher the second time. As a matter of fact, it seems about as possible as trying to keep yourself from drowning by drinking a large body of water from under you. My nerves continued to flood with excitement as I re-entered the lobby, which was now starting to fill up with pupils getting out of class or arriving for evening classes. Twiddling my thumbs, I watched as conversations sprung up all around me. I decided to try and weasel into a conversation along with Kristen, Cheryl, and several others that my physical form had no trouble communicating with. The conversation went from school, to guys or girls they had a crush on, to overprotective parents. "My parents are so overprotective," Kristen said. "I don't understand why—" Immediately, I set my brain to work, quickly trying to cook up something to say to Kristen. My mind was racing hard, too busy to allow my ears to hear the rest of what Kristen was saying. At last, I had it. It was time for my mind to take a hit. My heart thumped loudly, and my nerves pulsed ferociously, and then I spoke. "Well, your parents love you, and, never mind." The words came out in a crackly voice as small as a mouse. Kristen didn't seem to hear. Neither did Cheryl, and nor did anyone in the group for that matter. The conversation carried on to other things, and I was left with no choice but to listen and to wait for another opportunity to say something to Kristen, who was more of a concern to me, even though Cheryl was now tugging at a portion of my brain as well. My mind grew bored and began wandering back to its place of dwelling, where a wide selection of films on DVD lay waiting to be viewed. Boredom is not an excuse for me, however. On that note, I didn't want any excuses. I wanted results. Perhaps I could contribute to the conversation with another movie reference, like a line or an impersonation of some funny character from a cartoon or comedy film to help brighten things up. Things didn't seem to need much brightening up, however. Kristen's smile and laughter every now and then as she interacted with her friends confirmed that. It also occurred to me that people's minds weren't on films or cartoons as much as mine was. As my eyes drifted around the room, they fell on the cork bulletin board, to which was tacked an article about the Starroom Arts Senior Company and some awards they had obtained. Immediately, a light bulb clicked on inside my head. That was it. I could get Kristen to talk about herself and her achievements. The plan was genius. Now, I just needed to strike up a conversation and take it in that direction. Kristen seemed to be in a deep conversation with Cheryl. Something told me that it would be rude to interrupt them. Also, My brain couldn't conjure up anything to say to begin the conversation. The clock on the wall reached 7 o'clock. In half an hour, my time would be up. I began to apply so much pressure to my brain that it was beginning to ache. I refused to let pain stop me from getting the results I needed, however. I had to moderate the time I spent around Kristen so as not to give myself or my intentions away. One wrong move, and my chances of winning this battle against my mind would be gone. Getting desperate, I put even more pressure on my brain to try and engage Kristen because time was running short. My mind, however, is easily distracting my brain by engaging it in verbal communication with other people and occasionally rubbing it in my face. In the last bit of time I had left, I began pressing my brain as hard as I could. My body must be drowning in an ocean of sweat by now. Smoke must be coming out of my ears. Tension between me and my mind has now reached breaking point. My brain is in a dilemma ready to explode. My option was that my brain try to communicate verbally with Kristen and risk the possibility of utter rejection and humiliation. My mind's option was just to forget about it and face the regret that was sure to follow. At the last minute, my mind delivers the fatal blow, blacking me out momentarily. It argues that risking the possibility of rejection and humiliation would, if anything, change Kristen's view of me for the worse. Facing the regret of not trying to communicate would only affect me and me alone. In that moment, facing the regret seemed like the better choice for my brain to make. It is in those moments that I knew I had lost yet another battle with my mind. My brain explodes with a loud boom, causing me to lose consciousness. I am only vaguely aware of my legs carrying me towards one of the white doors in the lobby. Blurred shapes swim before my eyes. My chest is pounding painfully with the ear-splitting bass of an electronic beat, accompanied by a synthesized tune and some kind of mechanical voice screaming a bunch of nonsense I didn't know or care about. The angry glare of fluorescent lights beamed down from above onto my physical form and that of several others around me. I lay flat on my front, my eyes gazing at my reflection in one of the giant mirrors covering the wall surrounding the area. My arms were bent at 90-degree angles on either side of me, and my hands were flat on the floor. "Okay!" a loud female voice yelled, splitting through the air. The voice belonged to a woman who seemed to be in her early 30s. She was wearing gray sweats and a black tank top shirt. A blue baseball cap was perched on her head, and her brown hair was pulled back into a tight bun. "Ready?" the woman said. 1, 2, 3, 4. As she counted, I felt my body move. A burning pain shot through my arms and began to slowly course throughout the rest of my body. With each count, the pain would be renewed more and more strongly. On and on this went up until 30. Then my body was allowed to take a rest momentarily before engaging in another exercise. By the time the first exercises were over, there was aching in my lower back, my stomach, my arms, and my legs. The agony was far from over, however. My body would soon be forced to mimic a sequence of moves so cleverly selected by the brown-haired lady wearing the baseball cap. My mind wasn't on board for getting these moves down pat, however. It was probably trying to get back to a peaceful place to celebrate yet another victory. My brain was left with the task of getting the right moves. I didn't care one bit about the torture my body was experiencing. As far as I was concerned, this pain was a very valuable lesson for my body to learn. The only reason my body even agreed to this torture is because of me. I had made a deal with my physical form, and my physical form had broken its end of the deal tonight. This pain was absolutely nothing compared to the hell I would give my physical form for failing me. The evening torture session was finally over at 9:30 p.m. By this time, Starroom Arts was closing and the school was emptying. Kristen is long gone, and so is Cheryl for that matter. The overhead chandeliers are turned off, leaving only the glow of the table lamps to light up the room. The doors of the classrooms are slightly ajar, showing that the rooms are pitch black. The only adults in the area are the receptionist, the director of the school, and parents who have arrived to pick up their children. I swung my backpack around my shoulders, and my feet returned to their shoes before carrying me defeated through the double glass doors. Outside, the wind was blowing, accompanied by drops of rain and occasional low rumbles of thunder. My feet carried me towards a minivan waiting in the parking lot with its headlights glowing, highlighting the rain that fell in front of them. I took the passenger seat and closed the door. My body was carried out of the parking lot and onto the highway as the rain outside began to fall more rapidly. A bright flash lit up the sky, accompanied by a loud clap of thunder. On its way back to my physical form's dwelling place, the minivan passed a theater where several movies were being advertised. Among these ads was a large poster which showed a picture of a man standing heroically in front of a bright red sunset, wearing a red and blue suit with a giant silver Z on it. The heading of the poster read Zip Zap. At the foot of the poster was March 11th, the date for the theatrical release of the movie. The storm became less and less intense as the van sped along winding highways leading past apartment complexes, convenience stores, grocery stores, and industrial areas. By the time the van had pulled into the wet, muddy driveway of my physical form's dwelling place, the rain had slowed to a light drizzle, and areas of the sky flashed soundlessly. My tired feet carried me out of the minivan, over the muddy yard, up the steps, and through the door of a one-story house made of brick and cedar. As I made my way through the living room, across the hall, and into a bedroom, I heaved my backpack onto the upper level of a bunk bed, and then climbed up after it. I tugged on the sleeve of my black t-shirt and pulled it off. After casually allowing this t-shirt to fall next to a black and white striped shirt, my head lay back onto a pillow and within seconds began to snore. It would be a whole weekend, a Monday and a Tuesday morning and afternoon, before I ever got another shot. During this time, I would teach my mind a lesson and give it the beating of a lifetime. Somehow, my mind seemed to get the better of me whenever Kristen was in our physical presence, which wasn't very often. In Kristen's absence, however, I was merciless. My mind took blow after blow from me. As much fun as it was beating my mind in Kristen's absence, I still wasn't satisfied, and I wouldn't be until I won a battle against my mind in Kristen's presence. I still had many opportunities in the future to beat my mind in front of Kristen. After tonight, however, I would be facing another force similar to myself, courtesy of Kristen's friend Cheryl. Despite these factors, however, I was determined not to give up hope that one of these days, my glorious victory was sure to find me.